Before kingdoms, before kings carved their names into stone, there were tribes who measured survival by fire, hunger, and trust. In the shadow of a towering volcano, one people built their lives on fear and reverence. They called it the Fire Mountain, a god that could bless or destroy. Every season they laid offerings at its burning mouth, carved idols, woven cloth, and food enough to starve themselves, all thrown into the flames so the ground would not open beneath them. These were not just gifts. They were promises, a fragile treaty between human and fire. But treaties break. One season, the tribe's greatest offering vanished, not burned, not consumed, but stolen. The chest was found shattered, the sacred items hidden among the furs of a young hunter. Whispers turned to shouts, and suspicion became a knife. The mountain answered first. Its roar split the night. Ash rained like black snow and fire licked the sky. To the tribe, this was not chance. It was punishment. They believed the betrayal had awakened the mountain's wrath. Yet the true betrayal ran deeper. It was not hunger nor greed, but power. A hand inside the tribe itself, willing to sacrifice blood to keep control. And in the fire's shadow, the people learned that their greatest enemy was never the gods above, but the lies within. The Fire Mountain breathed smoke like an old god's sigh. To the tribe, it was not stone, but spirit, a presence that watched, judged, and punished when forgotten. Every season, offerings were carried to its base. Woven baskets of grain, carved totems, animal hides, and the blood of sacred hunts. All given so the fire stayed asleep. Stories kept children awake at night. Tales of ancestors swallowed by rivers of molten rock, villages erased in one night of anger. They grew up fearing betrayal more than death. Now came the season of the great offering. Once every generation, a chest of priceless gifts was sealed. Obsidian blades, crimson cloth, the heart of a rare stag taken from the mountain's shadow. It was said this offering bound the tribe's fate. If given truly, the mountain would close its eye for decades. If broken, the gods would rise hungry. On the eve of the ritual, the tribe gathered. Fires burned high, voices rose in chant, and the chest was laid in the shrine, wrapped in ash and cord. But at dawn, the chest gaped open, the bindings were cut, the sacred gifts were gone. At first, silence strangled the camp. Then the cries came. Men shouting, women wailing, children clutching at their mothers. To steal from the mountain was to invite the end. Suspicion leapt like sparks in dry grass. Hunters were accused of envy, women of witchcraft, children of foolish games. Yet all knew this was no mistake. It was a hand guided by intent. The chief, Orak, stood tall among the chaos, his voice carried like a drum. The gods will not forgive betrayal. We must find the thief before the fire finds us. That night, no one slept. The mountain glowed red in the distance, as if already tasting vengeance. Some swore they heard groans in the earth. In the shadows, the betrayer watched. The stolen offering was hidden, its weight both treasure and curse. Their heart thundered with fear and with a darker thrill. By the second day, the world itself shifted. Animals fled, rivers steamed with heat, and tremors rolled beneath bare feet. The fire was waking. The tribe gathered at the base of the mountain. Smoke stung their eyes, sulfur filled their throats. Orak raised his arms. Return what was taken, and mercy may yet come. But no voice confessed. The crowd murmured, eyes darting, each man's fear sharpening into blame for his neighbor. The eruption began with a scream, not human, the mountain itself. A crack like the sky breaking, fire bursting from the summit, ash blotting out the sun. Panic ripped the tribe apart. Fires swallowed huts. Rivers of molten stone carved new scars into the valley. Children shrieked as the earth opened beneath them. Through the chaos, Orak searched faces. He had seen glances, half-truths, shadows that lingered. He knew the betrayal was not foreign. It lived among them. Days later, silence returned. Ash covered the land, fields buried, homes destroyed. Half the tribe was gone, but the gods were not finished. Among the ruins, fragments of the stolen offering were found, not in the mountain's crater, but in the dwelling of Orak's own kin. Gasps struck the survivors like blows. The betrayer was no rival, no stranger, but blood of the chief himself. The fragments lay in the dust, blackened but recognizable. Obsidian blades dulled by ash, crimson cloth singed but not consumed. Tokens meant for gods, now evidence against kin. The crowd circled like wolves, whispers sharpened into teeth. It was him. It was always him. The mountain punished us for his crime. The name rose from trembling lips. Koro, Orak's nephew, a boy barely grown, clever, restless, with a gaze that lingered too long on forbidden things. Koro was dragged into the center, his arms bound, his face pale. He struggled against the weight of stairs heavier than ropes. "I did not take them," he cried. "I only hid them after they were already broken. I feared what the tribe would do." But fear was a poor defense. To the survivors, his words were smoke, and smoke always led to fire. Orak's heart clenched. Blood of his sister, child of his house. Yet to spare him was to risk the tribe's faith and the mountain's wrath. Lyra, Koro's mother, broke through the ring, her hair wild, her eyes burning with grief. She shielded her son with her own body. "You will not take him," she spat. "You blame him because you fear truth. You would rather kill a boy than face the rot among yourselves." The council gathered, voices rising. Some demanded sacrifice, blood to cool the fire. Others hesitated, torn between justice and desperation. The mountain groaned again, ash drifting like a reminder. Every tremor fed the belief that delay meant death for all. Vek, the elder, spoke last. "Mercy is weakness. The gods do not listen to excuses. They listen to blood." Orak raised the sacred spear. Its shadow stretched long in the firelight, a choice made visible before it was spoken. Lyra's scream cut the night, but the crowd's roar drowned her, demanding judgment, demanding proof of loyalty from their chief. Koro's eyes locked with Orak's. Not defiant, not pleading, only hurt, as if asking why blood must pay for smoke. The spear struck, one thrust, clean and final, silencing the boy forever. The mountain's voice softened. The tremors stilled. The smoke thinned. To the tribe, it was proof. The sacrifice had been accepted. Lyra collapsed over her son. Her grief was too deep for sound, her body shaking with the force of a soul shattered beyond words. Orak stood unmoving, his face carved from stone, but inside he was ash, hollowed by the fire of his own hand. The people praised him as savior. They bowed, they wept, they thanked him for saving them from the mountain's wrath. But whispers lingered. If the offering had been found in his kin's house, was it truly the boy's hand that betrayed them, or someone else's? Lyra's gaze burned through the crowd. Her voice rose raw, broken, but unyielding. "You call this justice, I call it murder." The words pierced deeper than ash. For the first time, the people doubted not the boy, but the chief who condemned him. The fire quieted, but the tribe did not. They ate in silence, each bite tasting of ash, each shadow longer than the last. Children clung to mother's skirts. They had seen a boy condemned, and their dreams would remember it louder than any prayer. Lyra sat apart, hair streaked with soot. Her arms cradled empty air where her son had been, her eyes fixed on the mountain as if daring it to strike again. Whispers moved like smoke. Some said Orak had been strong, others that he had been too eager to spill blood. Both sides feared their own words. At dawn, the river boiled with heat. Dead fish floated belly up. scales peeling. The mountain's hunger had not truly ended. Vek saw omen in the steam. The gods demand more, he told the people. Koro's death was only the first step. The fire is not appeased. Orak clenched his jaw. He had killed blood of his blood, and still the earth groaned beneath him. Doubt gnawed like teeth in the dark. Lyra rose before the council. Her voice cracked, but her fury burned steady. You blind yourselves with fear. It was not my son who betrayed us. It was one of you. The people murmured uneasily. A mother's grief was dangerous, but a mother's truth was harder to silence. She pointed to the shrine. The cords were cut with skill, not haste. The thief knew the old knots, the kind only elders learn. Eyes shifted toward Vek, then away. His staff thudded against the ground. Lies of grief, he said. The mountain would have struck me first if I were guilty. But seeds of doubt had been planted. Children whispered them, women repeated them, and hunters carried them like burdens, heavier than spears. That night, Orak walked the camp alone. He passed huts sagging with ash, heard coughs in the dark, and saw eyes that no longer met his. He paused at the shrine. There, half buried in soot, lay a cord fragment. Its knot was tied with care, marked by a small notch, a craftsman's signature. Orak's heart froze. He knew that notch. He had seen it many times before, carved into the staves of Vek, the elder who now called for more blood. The mountain rumbled faintly, a reminder. But for Orak, the true fire now burned not in stone, but in betrayal revealed. He gripped the cord until his palm bled. For the first time, he feared not the gods above, but the lies woven within his own council. The tribe no longer moved as one. 2 fires burned in the valley, one by the shrine, one by the river bend. Those who stayed with Orak called themselves the Keepers. They clung to old rites, binding themselves to fear like bark to a tree. Those who followed Lyra's daughter Nara chose another path. They became ashwalkers, refusing blood sacrifices, building their own hearths away from the shrine. Nara was young, yet her voice carried. She spoke of work instead of worship, of walls instead of wounds, of promises to each other instead of gods. Orak watched from the ridge at dusk. 2 fires, 2 tribes, both staring at the same mountain, pretending it belonged only to them. Vek pressed close with his staff. Chief, the girl's defiance weakens us. If she refuses blood, the mountain will demand twice from us. Orak's silence was heavy. Every night he still heard Koro's last breath, and every morning the cord fragment whispered its accusation. On the 7th night, a boy vanished. He was found near a fissure in the rock, staring into heat as if listening to a story no one else could hear. The mountain spoke, the boy said. It said the fire eats lies, it wants truth, not blood. Vek dragged him away, calling it demon speech. But Nara knelt at the fissure and listened, as if the ground itself could tell her a secret. Dawn brought a council at the shrine. Vek's voice was sharp. The ashwalkers defy the gods, demand their blood or cast them out. Nara entered, calm as stone. We will not spill blood, she said, but we will trade truth for truth. Bring the fragments, all of them, and we will show what we found. Orak stepped forward with the cord in his hand. The knot bore Vek's notch clear as firelight. Tell us why this rope bears your mark, he said. Murmurs rippled like wind in tall grass. Vek's jaw tightened. All knots look alike in ash. Do not mistake smoke for flame. But Nara laid down another token, a shard of bone dyed red, the same dye that stained Vek's mantle. For a moment his mask cracked. Then he struck, staff lunging for Nara's chest. Orak's spear caught the blow. Wood rang on wood, sparks of resin flying, and the tribe's obedience shattered in that single clash. Chaos surged. Keepers dragged Vek back. Ashwalkers shielded Nara, and the mountain's breath thickened like it too was listening. Orak roared above the din. "No more lies, we climb. The mountain itself will judge where truth lives." And so the divided tribe began the climb together, bound not by faith but by fear, and by the shadow of betrayal unmasked. The climb was cruel. Ash slid beneath their feet, smoke clawed their throats, and every step felt like trespass into a god's chamber. Children were carried on backs. Mothers wrapped cloths over mouths. Fathers gripped spears not for hunting, but for courage. At the rim, the world opened. A red eye glowed beneath them, churning alive. The fire mountain's heart laid bare. The people trembled, knees weak before its breath. But Orak stood tall, spear planted like a stake. "Let the mountain choose," he said. Vex sneered, his mantle heavy with ash. "The mountain already chose. It devoured us until Koro's blood cooled it." Nara's voice cut through the smoke. "You lie to yourself, old man. The fire waits for truth. It hungers for the hand that broke the cord." She cast the fragment into the crater. It flared bright, brighter than the sun, as if the fire itself swallowed proof. Gasps filled the air. Some called it omen. Others whispered it was only fire-eating rope. Vec raised his staff. "If the mountain wants me, let it take me now," he cried, daring the abyss. The ground shuddered. A crack split beneath his feet, thin at first, then wide enough for the staff to fall through. Vec staggered, clutching at nothing. His eyes widened, not in fear, but in shock that the mountain answered at all. The people watched as the elder toppled. His cry was short, cut by fire, swallowed into silence. No cheer followed. The tribe stared at the rim, each face pale with the weight of what they had seen. Nara spoke softly, her words steady. "The mountain does not want blood, it wants honesty. That is the sacrifice." Orak lowered his spear. His shoulders sagged, not with weakness, but with a release he had denied himself since Koro's death. They descended together, the keepers and ashwalkers side by side. The mountain still burned, but it did not roar. Back in the valley, two fires became one. The people gathered around it, wary but closer, bound not by Vec's fear, but by what they had witnessed. Yet beneath the ashes of unity, doubt lingered. If betrayal had hidden in the council once, could it not return in another hand? The fire mountain glowed on the horizon, silent, patient, watching, as if waiting for the next reason to remember men. Peace came like a thin blanket. It warmed the shoulders at dusk and slipped away by dawn, leaving skin to the bite of old winds. The valley breathed differently. Smoke no longer ruled the horizon, and birds tested the air with hesitant notes, as if asking permission to return. Work replaced worship. Ashwalkers raised river walls, keepers rebuilt huts, children fetched stone as if play had always meant labor. Orak walked without escort. He paused at ruins, lifted beams with his own shoulders, and spoke less like a chief and more like a man who owed the ground a debt. Nara mapped the water's temper. She taught the young to read gravel, to measure reeds, to find the quiet bends where roots could anchor and not be torn away. The shrine went quiet. No chants, no incense, only stacked stones, a mark of memory rather than fear. Yet distrust lingered. Two camps burned the same fire but slept apart, each watching the other through the corner of their eyes. A new name crept into whispers, Mael, a rope weaver, quiet and patient with hands that tied knots stronger than iron. He listened more than he spoke. When he smiled, people leaned closer, trusting cords more than words. Mael bound beams with skill, his knots held when storms pressed, his lashings never slipped. He earned loyalty not with speeches, but with rope. At the river, children copied his hands. He taught them loops and bends, but never all of them. He kept one knot hidden, the kind that never let go. By night, the mountain glowed faintly, not in anger, not in peace, only in patience, as if it too was watching the knots being tied. Orak found a hidden cache under a fallen lintel, bundles wrapped in soot-stiff cloth, cords marked with Mael's notch, and tokens dyed the red of Vek's mantle. He carried them to Nara by the border path. Her gaze measured the cords by his silence more than his words. "These knots are not accidents," Orak said. "They were made in order over years, a habit, not a mistake." Nara touched the tokens, her jaw hardening. "We burned Vek, but not the roots. Someone watered them while we built walls." The rope lay heavy between them. The mountain's eye flickered in the dusk, brighter for a breath, as if amused by the persistence of betrayal. Peace frayed at the edges. Two fires burned close, but their smoke curled apart, never fully joining. The river swelled with spring rain. Ashwalkers guided its rush with stone and reed, teaching water to move like a guest, not a thief. But one night the levee failed. A wall broke like a rib, and water lunged into the camp, stealing mats, grain, and a mother's new hut. At dawn, the flood drew back like an innocent. But in the mud, Nara found reeds cut clean, as if a blade had taught them their shape. Orak traced the marks in silence. No river cut so straight. Knifework had walked here before the night was done. The trail led upstream. Finger-shorn grass, heel prints in clay, a bead of red dye caught on a root, the color of Vek's mantle. They found a thicket altar, stones bound with fresh cord. The notch in the rope was Miles, neat and proud, as if signing a letter. Miles stepped from the brush, unhurried. "You came quickly," he said, smiling. "Quickness saves people from mercy, which rots more surely than fire." "You cut our levee," Nara accused. "I reminded the river of its path," Miles answered. "Without fear you forget shape. I gave it back." Orak's hand tightened on his spear. "You endanger children for lessons?" Mael's eyes glimmered. "Children learn best when their sleep is tested. Fear is a teacher you're trying too hard to silence." They bound him and dragged him to the border path. He did not resist. His patience was heavier than chains. That night the wind carried iron's ring. Basalt kin raiders slid from the cliffs, spears sharp, eyes hungrier than wolves. Their leader wore glass teeth around her neck. She called across the dark, "Vek promised iron for obedience. If you refuse, we'll take bodies instead." Mothers clutched children, fathers lifted weapons too light against iron points. Orak's voice was steady. "Vek is gone. We pay no more in fear. Work with us, or face walls built by hands that no longer kneel." The raiders laughed, spears gleaming, but then the mountain's breath shifted, a low growl rolling under their feet. For a moment, even iron listened. The fire did not rise. It waited, as though choosing which betrayal deserved its name next. The raiders struck at moonrise. Iron teeth flashed, torches spat, and their war song split the valley like an axe. Children were rushed into the house that holds. Its beams groaned, rope biting tighter as if it too had decided to fight. Sarah, the cliff-born warrior, led the front. Her spear moved like lightning with memory, each thrust reminding the raiders they were trespassers, not kings. Nara shouted orders clear and sharp. "Hold line, guide them to the river mouth, not the shrine." Water became ally. Ashwalkers loosed reed dams, turning the stream into a sudden flood that split enemy ranks. Yet the raiders pressed hard. Their leader's glass teeth gleamed in firelight, a grin sharpened by hunger for fear. Inside, Mael strained against his bonds. "Let me loose," he hissed. "I can end this. You need my knots more than your pride." Orak ignored him, spear wet with battle sweat, but the mountain rumbled louder than any chant, shaking dust from the rafters. Panic broke among the children. They cried, clutching mothers, thinking the fire had chosen its side. Mael's voice carried above the clash. "Fear is the oldest god. Unbind me and I'll chain it for you." Nara turned, eyes fierce. Fear is not a god, it's a leash, and we are done being led. Still, a cord snapped on the hall post. The roof shuddered, half the beams sagging as if to prove Mael's point. Sarah rammed her spear through the raider chief's shoulder. Glass teeth clattered into the mud, their grin broken. The raiders faltered. Some fled to the cliffs, others fell where they stood, their iron gifts rusting in blood and rain. Silence returned, jagged, filled with smoke and breath. Only the mountain kept growling louder, as though angered by indecision. Mael smiled through his ropes. You can bind me, but you cannot bind what waits beneath us. The fire listens only to fear, and I am the one who feeds it. Orak's hand shook on the spear. The tribe stared at him, at Nara, at Mael, waiting to see which voice they would follow and which the mountain would choose. The battlefield smoldered under gray dawn. Broken spears jutted from mud, and smoke curled from huts where fire had licked too deeply. The people buried their dead with silence, ash mixed with earth, forming mounds that looked like the mountain had reached down to mark them. Orak stood over the fallen raider chief. Her glass teeth were gathered into a pouch, each fang clinking like the echo of an old contract. Nara pressed her palm to the house that holds. The beam had bent but not fallen, rope scarred but unbroken. This is the shape we keep, she said. Mael was dragged into the circle, his wrists bound, his eyes patient. He looked less like a prisoner than a teacher waiting for a slow class. You endangered us, Orak growled. You speak of fear as if it were fire itself. It is, Mael said softly. You think you defied it, but look at your faces. You fought harder because you were afraid. Murmurs flickered through the crowd. Some nodded, grudging, ashamed. Others spat, unwilling to grant him truth. Nara's voice cut the air. Fear need not be God. Fear can be guessed. We keep it in the house where it cannot command. She took chalk and knelt at the doorpost. Her hand carved the first clear mark. House, not God. Children traced it with their fingers. They did not fully understand, but they felt its weight. A word carved to last longer than breath. Mael tilted his head, amused. Words are weaker than knots. A storm will wear them away. Nara met his gaze steady. Then we carve deeper and teach even storms to read. Orak added another line beneath hers. Work, not worship. His voice carried no pride, only a need to name what had almost been lost. The tribe murmured, some with relief, some with unease. To live without the mountain as God was a step heavier than battle itself. Lyra's memory stirred in their minds. They remembered her screams, her defiance, her grief sharpened into truth. It was her fire that lived now in Nara's words. Sarah lifted her spear, not as weapon. Walls that open, she said, echoing her promise. Bridges that bend. Nara carved again. Keep each other, the third law, simple, sharp, alive. The mountain rumbled faintly, not in fury, not in hunger, but as if listening to a new kind of offering. Seasons turned, and rain forgot the valley. The river thinned to ribs of stone. Fish vanished, and the fields cracked under a pitiless sun. Children licked dew from leaves at dawn. Mothers carried jars twice as far, only to return with water sour and thin. The house that holds grew heavy with silence. Each night the carved words glimmered faintly in firelight, promises that cost more to keep with every day of thirst. Miles spoke from his ropes, voice like a slow drip. Fear would feed you. Fear would make the mountains sweat, but you cling to wood and chalk. Orak ignored him, though doubt pressed his chest. A law is only as strong as the hunger it survives. On the seventh moon of drought, a figure appeared. The priest who had vanished into ash returned, robes ragged but eyes still sharp as knives. He carried no staff, only a shard of bronze. Your house is empty, he declared. The mountain listens still. Pay it blood, and the sky will remember rain. The people wavered, parched lips parting. Some looked to the charter, some to the crater's glow, torn between hope and fear. Nara stepped forward with cracked hands. We will not trade our children to the fire. We will trade labor to the sky. She showed nets of cloth strung on poles. Each morning they caught dew, a trick taught by flatwalkers who once wandered with thirst. The priest sneered. Dew cannot fill rivers. You will crawl back to me when the earth bleeds you dry. Sarah thrust a spear into the dirt. We crawl for no one. If rain is a god, let it answer work, not knives. Still, the ground quaked faintly at dusk. The mountain's breath rose hot from a new fissure, a warning, a reminder of the price once paid. The charter's words were tested. Would the people break them for survival, or would they hold and risk the fire's wrath? The fissure widened with each dawn. Breath hissed from the earth, hot and sour, curling over fields already thin with drought. Children coughed in their sleep. Mothers pressed wet cloths to mouths, praying the air itself would show mercy. Mael's eyes glowed in the half-light. Unbind me, he whispered. I know knots that can leash even smoke. Nara shook her head. You tie prisons, not shelters. We will not trade one chain for another. That night, strangers came down the ash road. Salt traders thin as reeds, carrying cracked jars and a map of thirst etched into bone. They bowed low, offering stories instead of weapons. Teach us your nets, they said, and we will show you where the earth hides water beneath its scars. Some feared them, muttering of spies, but others saw only faces hollow with the same hunger that haunted their own. Orak weighed silence, then nodded once. Work with us, bread and water for truth. Fear buys nothing here. The flatwalkers taught the valley to auger sand. Bone drills kissed the ground until cool threads whispered upward into jars. Children laughed at the first trickle. The sound of water was brighter than any hymn. That evening, the strangers traced the charter on the doorpost. Their fingers paused at the blank 9th line, the space waiting for a lesson not yet learned. Nara lifted chalk, her hand steady. She carved the words, teach, before storm. Voices murmured, testing the phrase. It felt like stone underfoot, a promise heavier than fear, lighter than chains. The priest spat in the dust. You trust vagabonds to carve your laws, you shame the gods. But the mountain only rumbled faintly like a beast turning in its sleep. Not rage, not hunger, patience, as if it too wished to see what new law could hold. The fissure spat louder, trembling the valley. Heat shimmered over fields and the river shrank to a whisper. The priest stood once more before the house that holds. His robes hung in tatters, but his voice cut sharp as ever. Your charter is chalk, he sneered. The mountain knows only blood. Offer it now, or it will devour you whole. Orak lifted no spear this time. He pointed instead to the carved lines, deepened by rain, traced by hundreds of hands. House, not God, he said. Work, not worship. People, not price. We will not bend again. The priest's fury cracked. He raised the bronze shard like a knife, lunging toward Nara where she stood at the doorway. Mael's voice rang out calm and strange. Give me the rope. Orak hesitated, then threw the coil. Mael's hands moved like memory, weaving the hidden knot, the slip that held without choking. The cord snared the priest mid-stride. It tightened just enough to stop him, not enough to kill. Mercy decided early, not late. He fell gasping in the dust. The people stared, not in fear, but in recognition of a law made flesh. Nara touched the doorpost with chalk once more. She filled the blank beneath the 9th line. Mercy before vengeance. The mountain growled deep, then sighed. Steam lifted, then thinned, carried away by wind that no longer bit. Rain followed days later, soft and stubborn. It tapped roofs like a friend, reminding them it had not left forever. The house that holds stood tall, its beams scarred, its ropes darkened, its walls carrying the marks of both storms and hands. Children learned to play holding with new rules. Tie, untie, carry, share. Count to 7, remember mercy before anger. Orak laid the sacred spear above the door. No longer a weapon, only a beam, part of the house it had once divided. Nara spoke by firelight, her voice steady. We are not the mountain's prisoners. We are its neighbors. It breathes, we breathe, and together we endure. Mael sat by the threshold, rope coiled at his side. For the first time, his eyes softened, as if even he had learned to untie himself. The priest was led away, not slain. Exiled with water and bread, he vanished into the horizon, carrying only the echo of a law he could not bend. At dusk, the valley sang no hymns, only work songs, steady, human, unafraid of silence. Far above, the fire turned in its sleep. It did not roar, did not demand. It listened, and the word it heard was together. And in that, the tribe found its true God. Not the mountain, not the flame, but the keeping of each other.